had a real treat over the weekend. I'm a Gordon Ryan fan, but I'm also a grappling fan. That would extend to his opponent, Pena. Felipe Pena, fan as well. Subscriber to Flow Grappling, so Gordon and Pena, which are huge rivals. I suppose the biggest rivalry for Gordon now is Andre Galvao, just because we've had years to build this match, which is upon us. But boy, you're splitting hairs there. Gordon and Pena, I mean, this is a whole big backstory too. Okay. So they're going to come out and they're going to do this grappling match. Now, they're going to do it submission only, no time limit. That's a really cool thing to hardcore fans. Like, I'm not against that from an entertainment or from a business perspective. I'm not being a prude. But the sport of grappling is headed nowhere. It's gone nowhere in the 2+ decades that we've been aware of it. I grew up as a wrestler. I never even heard the word grappling. I mean, in all fair, I never heard it. Gi and no gi and these different wonderful things happen in Abu Dhabi and the Prince. We all understand these things, and it's a lot of fun for our community. It's not an industry. It's not something that you can move forward. It's not something that Jim Rome's about to, or Dan Le Batard's about to invite one of these guys on the show. It's not something that's ever going to cut into Sports Center or even get a reader on the bottom third. It's simply not. Now, it's not because the characters aren't interesting. For a large part of grappling, it's the exact same characters. They're selling out Madison Square Garden, doing it in something called MMA. So we know that the people are interesting. We know that the stories are interesting. We know that we have conflict and we have conflict resolution. That's what the whole thing's about. Then you get the guys with the intricacy. I'm going to grab the toe and I'm going to turn it this way and I'm going to stretch. Okay, good enough. You guys go do that in your dirty dungeon. But when you get in front of the audience, it's about conflict and conflict resolution. Great. You got a business here. You ain't got a very good one, but you've got one. Now, if people could find a way to work together. And by working together, you can have cutthroat, backstabbing competition. You just got to have it over the same rules. And there has not been somebody to step forward with money to lose, and they are going to lose. In the grappling world, there has not been a person, literal statement, that hasn't come in with their own set of rules. If you do an event, whatever your event is called, it has their own rules. And you can't have a sport that way. You can't have a ranking system that way. You can't have journalists and media and people getting behind it and breakdowns. You can't have those things unless you have the same rules. Any basketball court, any gym in the world, you walk into a junior high, you walk into a college, walk into club fitness, walk into NCAA, junior college, NAI, any way you want to do it. You're going to do a basketball court, they're going to do 4 quarters. Basket is going to be 2 points. Go to the foul line, you get a couple shots. You're outside the 3-point line, you get 3. I mean, do you understand? It's the same rules. You could be a 6-year-old child. You could be in the NBA finals. It's the same rules. Everybody understands it. When you go into grappling and you don't have the same rules, it's one of these really tough positions. So when you go into a no time, like, that's something special. There's something really cool to that. I was grateful that Flo brought it. I mean, I'm not a prude to this and I'm not against it. At the same time, you do have a meaningful conversation of, do we have a sport? I would say no. That was not a sport. There's certain like-minded things that sports have. Right? I don't get to choose, guys. I don't get to throw something across the room right now and tell you it was an airplane. I don't get to do that. There are certain things that have to meet a definition to qualify as an aircraft. There is no sport anywhere in the world that doesn't have time. It's one of the predominant functions. Sports are based off of some kind of a point system inside of a confined time. It is not important that you have more points than your opponent. It is important that you have more points than your opponent when time runs out. So if you don't have time, you now don't have a sport. You have something else. You have something cool and you prove some kind of a point. You for sure prove some kind of a point. But was it helpful? Was it successful? And I can play this game all day long. I can tell you the best quarterback. I can tell you the best wrestler. I can give you a whole diatribe on Jordan Burroughs and why he's so special. But if you change it and tell me that a match is now 3 minutes, we're having a different conversation. Or if you change it and you tell me some great nemesis of Jordan's, but they're going to go for 15 minutes. You've changed. This just got weird. There has to be a set time. I could get into sustainability and why you can't do that, why you can't bring an audience in. I could get to the fact that the worst part of a grappling event is the grappling. That is the absolute worst part. Bring in the packages, get the conflict, get the resolution, and get them the hell out of there. But you're going to have a few people that really want to see that. I'm not against it. It's very few. It's far between. It's why we can't see this every Saturday. It's why I can't get a broadcast. I mean, it's all these different reasons that I'm only getting in front of so I don't have to hear from you weirdos that want to tell me that you know something more than I do. You have conflict, you have conflict resolution. You get them in, you get them out, you bring the next one on. You do it all night long. This is what an event is. But it would come back to, this was a great match, right? I mean, Gordon really hung in there. Gordon has to go in there with a nemesis. Now, I would always look at Gordon Ryan as having a very meaningful advantage. Because he will go out of his way to compete. I get a hold of Gordon right now if I tell him I had a match. If I send Gordon's phone a text right now, even as a ruse, and tell him I have a match for you, I don't have to tell him the time limit, I don't have to tell him where it was, I don't have to tell him if it pays any money. If I tell him I have a match for, I will hear from him instantly. He will have somebody monitoring his phone. He will leave practice. But this is the way he is. Gordon is one of the few guys within that sport who has fully embraced and understood the concept that the best way to get better at something is by doing that thing. And you get the other guys that are hiding out. They don't want to go out there and compete. They just don't want to do it. That's up to them, man. That's their thing. So I would submit for you that Gordon is the best. I would submit for you that he's better than Pena. I would submit that for you because they had an agreed upon set of rules and Gordon got his hand raised. Seems pretty simple math, but did they? Did they? Is it a sport? If you don't have a time limit, do you have a sport? If you don't have boundaries, do you have a sport? If you don't have rules, if you don't have a scoring system, if you don't have judges in place, do you have a sport? Can I throw something across this room and make you believe it's an airplane? I don't have the authority to make it an airplane. That comes with a definition. And I only bring this to because it's one of these very bizarre things. Like there's some kind of candor here. I mean, they agreed to something, they went on and did it, not to mention it's very hard. Gordon, who is simply the greatest technician I've ever seen. Just stop the story right there. And frankly, it's not all that close. You can go have some real fun and try to pay your respects to Hodger or bring in Marcelo Garcia for the old day. You can go and do those things, but you don't mean them. He is a technician like no one else. Now you're talking about an ability to compete. You're talking about a grit. You're talking about a conditioning. I mean, this is really something special. I am giving this a ton of praise. I'm being very fair to this. Did we just see a sport? You've got to do X amount more to this person in this time frame, or you're not a sport. That would be an argument that someone could make. And if grappling wants to go do these, hey, good for them. Go right on ahead. I watched it and I'm glad that I did. But do you know who's better? You're going to come to the conclusion to Gordon. You're going to come to the conclusion because he's got his hand raised. Is that how it works? I had teammates. Boy, they wanted to go an hour. Called a grind match. They'd want to go 1 hour. And I'm scratching my head and I understand the work out there. I understand that that's good, hard work. I understand that we're huffing and puffing. We can go home and feel good about ourselves. But a wrestling match is 7 minutes. Why give a goddamn if I got more points than you or you got more points than me in 60 minutes? That's not what we're doing. Now or ever. Wrestled 1,000 wrestling matches. Not one of them was scheduled for an hour. So what difference does it make if you had 100 points on me and I only had 30 on you in the hour? If I had 20 points on you and you had 3 on me in 7 minutes, which is how this contested, I beat you. You did not beat me. You changed the rules to something else, but it comes back to me throwing something across the room. Do you have a sport? I'm asking the question. I'm proposing both sides to it. I'm telling you why this is headed nowhere. I'm telling you why this can't get a broadcast deal, this can't get a mention, and Jim Rome doesn't know this event happened. I'm telling you these things. You don't like to hear them, but I'm telling you them. And it's not because the promoter believes this is best, and it's not even because the fans are demanding it. It's because the promoter can't take control. You got a guy, you're writing the check. That means you're the boss. You tell him. It's 10 minutes. Oh, and by the way, your sport is painfully boring. The worst part about your sport is the sport. So give me a good interview, give me a call out, and get off the mat.